Saturday Night Live has been a cultural institution for half a century, but even its most beloved cast members couldn't stick around forever. Whether they were fired or left by choice, the show's most popular players said goodbye to Studio 8H for all sorts of reasons. As the first anchor of Saturday Night Live's faux newscast, Weekend Update, Chevy Chase typically introduced the segments with his signature intro.
Good evening, I'm Chevy Chase, and you're not.
Thanks to Weekend Update, his show-opening pratfalls, and his bumbling impersonation of then-President Gerald Ford, Chase became the first breakout star of the original, not ready for primetime players. Chase was also the first member of the original cast to exit the series, leaving partway through SNL's second season. It was widely assumed Chase left to pursue a movie career, as his first big-screen starring role came with 1978's Foul Play. However, he later revealed the real reason why he bailed on SNL years later in 2007, telling Today, "I left for a girl that I was in love with. It had nothing to do with lucrative film deals awaiting me. I was very much in love with a girl who just would not leave California." The comedian offered more details in a 2011 interview with the Los Angeles Times, recalling how he was infatuated with his future ex-wife Jacqueline Carlin, saying, "She would not move to New York and insisted that I come there. It was all nuts, looking back on it, but I did regret it." Every single member of the original Saturday Night Live cast left, along with series creator Lorne Michaels, after the show's fifth season. This led to NBC hiring a new producer, Gene Doumanian, and a whole new cast. The result was a season that is generally agreed to be one of the show's worst. Yet, one moment from that otherwise forgettable season remains legendary, when cast member Charles Rocket, during an episode outro, dropped an F-bomb on live television. By that point, ratings had nosedived, and it had become painfully clear to anyone watching that SNL had become an unmitigated disaster. Doumanian was fired after the incident, as were several members of the cast. Rocket, predictably, was among them. Doumanian told The Hollywood Reporter of the firings, "That was an excuse. I just thought it was quite unfair." While Rocket continued to work steadily in comedy following the infamous incident, appearing in films like Hocus Pocus and Dumb and Dumber, he was tragically found dead in a field near his home in 2005. The medical examiner ruled the death a suicide. Gilbert Gottfried had one of the most recognizable voices in Hollywood history, but he wasn't at his most successful during his time in Studio 8H. Gottfried scored a spot on Saturday Night Live in 1980, as part of the all-new cast in the infamous sixth season. This turned out not to be the best career choice, Gottfried recalled on the Joe Rogan Experience. The idea back then of Saturday Night Live with different cast members? That just wasn't. Now it's like the cast changes every 5 minutes, but back then, it was like, no. It would be like saying, like in the middle of Beatlemania, that, oh, we're getting 4 other guys to be the Beatles. It didn't help that the show avoided taking advantage of Gottfried's wild antics that aced his initial audition. Many of his sketches didn't even feature his signature ear-piercing screech.
Why did the moron throw the clock out the window? 'Cause he's a freaking moron! That's why.
Gottfried told Rogan, "I remember I didn't like the writers and the writers hated me, and so one time to prove it, how much they hated me, they wrote a funeral sketch where I was the dead body, so I just had to lie there in the coffin." The sketch served as a suitable allegory for the fate of that cast, as most of them were purged after that horrific season. Lucky for him, Gottfried's comedic career flourished after that experience. These days, Harry Shearer is best known for providing the voices of Mr. Burns, Principal Skinner, and various other characters on The Simpsons. He also holds the rare distinction of quitting Saturday Night Live, not once, but twice. Hired as a writer-performer for the 1979 to 1980 season, Shearer wound up quitting shortly after he was hired. He used 2 words to describe his experience to IGN: living hell. Nevertheless, Shearer returned to SNL 5 years later during the 1984 to 1985 season. When asked why he would do this return given his previous experiences, Shearer explained that when he and his This Is Spinal Tap co-stars, Michael McKeon and Christopher Guest, performed on the show as their fictional rock alter egos, they were treated so well that he believed the culture had changed.
I believe, and I think it goes for everybody in the band, that a man's relationship with the devil is a very private affair.
That feeling proved to be short-lived. As Shearer admitted in an interview for the SNL oral history book, Live from New York, I was pretty miserable for virtually the entire season. When Shearer finally quit the second time, SNL's then-producer, Dick Ebersol, put out a press release announcing that the comic had parted ways with the show due to creative differences. In the book, Shearer declared that when a reporter called asking for comment, he'd quipped, "Yeah, I was creative and they were different." Julia Louis-Dreyfus is one of the most recognizable women on television, thanks to her award-winning roles in Seinfeld and Veep. But her 3 seasons on SNL were far less acclaimed. They weren't particularly enjoyable either. As she said on Radio Andy, "I didn't have tons of fun, but I did learn a ton. I was really super young. I was 21 and I went into it very naively." She also told Bustle that SNL was, quote, "not a female-friendly environment at all." She recalled that it was difficult to get her sketches aired on the show. One saving grace was that her tenure on SNL enabled her to work with castmate and boyfriend Brad Hall, whom she would eventually marry. Louis-Dreyfus discovered another silver lining during her time on the show, meeting writer Larry David, who would later co-create a star vehicle for her in the form of Elaine on Seinfeld. She joked, "He was there my 3rd year, his one and only year, and we bonded because he was super miserable, and I was super miserable, and you know how misery loves company." Arguably, one of Saturday Night Live's most beloved seasons was the 10th, which brought heavy hitters Billy Krystle and Martin Short into the fold. While Krystle delivered memorable characters ranging from Suave Fernando to talk show host Joe Franklin, Short resurrected such SCTV favorites as Ed Grimley and Jackie Rogers Jr. Despite their success on the show, neither returned for the 11th season. As it turned out, they never intended to. As Short explained in Live from New York, "I had a 1-year contract. I certainly approached that show not as someone who was going to be around, obviously for more than 1 year. So I felt that I had to do a lot and be in as many interesting things as possible, because it was just a limited time." Krystle said, "I never put a time limit on how long I would be there or what it would give me or get me. I just felt personally as a performer and as a creative person, I had to give it my shot." Dennis Miller joined the cast of Saturday Night Live in its 11th season, taking over the Weekend Update anchor desk. With his wry delivery and endless quiver of obscure pop culture references, Miller's quirky comedic style proved to be a hit with viewers until his exit in 1991. Miller's next move was to host a late-night talk show, The Dennis Miller Show, which debuted in January 1992. In an interview with the Chicago Tribune to promote the show, Miller explained why he left SNL, saying that the arrival of his son made him reset his priorities and cast a wider net career-wise.
You're not going to come back every week and hang out on the set like Lovitz, are you?
No, I'm really going, Lawrence.
Because that would be really pathetic.
Miller elaborated, "I'm not trying to sound too maudlin, but something about his birth reacquainted this urge in me to strive for things. When I had the kid, I thought, why don't you see what you can do? Why don't you test it a little? Make the boy proud." That test, unfortunately, was not successful. By July of that year, The Dennis Miller Show was canceled. Speaking about the show's failure with the Los Angeles Times, Miller shrugged it off, musing, "People lose their jobs every day." Robert Downey Jr. might be immortalized as Iron Man, but the actor hardly had a metallic grip on comedy when he joined Saturday Night Live for a single season back in 1985. SNL was slumping in the ratings as NBC tried to retool the show. Lorne Michaels returned after a 5-year hiatus, bringing in a fresh roster of players that included Downey. There was only one problem. Downey was too green to take on something as frenetic as a weekly live sketch comedy program. He said in a 1991 interview, "I really learned a lot. It was also just crazy. I mean, I guess I was like 19 or 20. It was tough and I learned a lot, and I don't complain on film sets nearly as much as I should because of that experience." The good news for the show was that the addition of cast members like Nora Dunn, John Lovitz, and Dennis Miller helped steer SNL out of troubled waters. By his own admission, Downey had nothing to do with that turnaround given his lack of grounding in improv or sketch comedy. He reminisced on Off Camera with Sam Jones. But I would still say to this day that there's not a more exciting 90 minutes you can have, whether you are any good or not. It's just amazing. Ben Stiller joined the cast of Saturday Night Live in 1989 and quit after just 4 episodes. During a 2018 interview with The Howard Stern Show, the actor-director explained that he left the series because his primary ambition at that point was to direct short films. When Stiller was hired for SNL, he was under the assumption that was what he'd be doing, making comedic short films that would air between live sketches. Instead, he found himself performing on live television, and he hated it. Stiller told Stern, "I knew that I wasn't good live because I would get nervous. I just felt I couldn't do well in that situation." However, there were no hard feelings, as Stiller subsequently returned to host the show twice and appeared in 2018 as President Donald Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen. This came about when Stiller emailed SNL executive producer Lorne Michaels asking for tickets to the show. Stiller recalled, "He sent me back an email the next day saying, 'Sounds fun, great, and oh, by the way, do you happen to have a Michael Cohen impression lying around?'"
For too many years, I was loyal to a man when I should not have been. Now I know how Khloe Kardashian feels.
Saturday Night Live has never been afraid to rock the boat, but few players were as subversive as comedian Chris Rock. When Rock joined the cast in 1990, his in-your-face delivery portraying characters like activist Nat X and unhinged news correspondent Buster Jenkins made him a standout in a cast already full of heavy hitters. While Rock made a huge impact on the show after only 3 seasons, being one of the only black cast members made him a novelty that prompted SNL creatives to put him in stereotypical roles. Meanwhile, Rock admired the largely black-dominated cast of their rival show, In Living Color, which delivered edgier sketches featuring more diverse characters. Rock recalled on WTF with Marc Maron, "The people at SNL are the nicest people ever. I'm friends with everybody there." So it wasn't that. The reason for wanting to be on In Living Color was just hip, man. History showed that I had a sense of humor in me, but I was never going to be able to do that stuff at SNL. Whether Rock was fired or left SNL on his own accord is still debatable. But either way, he managed to land a spot on In Living Color for the series' final season before it was canceled. Another short-lived Saturday Night Live cast member was Sarah Silverman, who was a featured player for a single season in 1993 and 1994. Despite her subsequent success in film, TV, and stand-up comedy, her tenure on the show was as forgettable as it was brief. In a 2005 interview with The Believer, Silverman even didn't want to discuss the experience because she felt it was boring, but she did reveal that she learned she'd been fired via fax machine. Bob Odenkirk, who was an SNL writer at the time, shed some light on Silverman's brief time on the show in her profile in The New Yorker that same year. He said, "I could see how it wouldn't work at SNL. Because she's got her own voice. She's very much Sarah Silverman all the time. She doesn't really do character voices. She puts out stuff that she would appreciate, and then you can like it or not. She doesn't give a Adam Sandler and the late Chris Farley were among the new talent brought aboard Saturday Night Live in the show's 16th season. And during their 5 years on the show, they both proved to be standouts. Despite being 2 of the series' most popular cast members at the time, Sandler and Farley were both fired before the 21st season, leaving them both feeling blindsided. Sandler discussed the experience during an appearance on The Howard Stern Show, saying, "At the time, I was hurt because I didn't know what else I was gonna do. But I remember when I saw Farley, he said to me, 'Me too. They don't want me either.' We were both like, this. We got mad together, pretended we weren't sad, and pretended this was for the best." Sandler also addressed being axed in a monologue song when he hosted SNL in May 2019, marking the first time he'd been back since being let go.
Maybe they were sick of Canteen Boy, but I think they just hate the Jews.
In Jay Mohr's Saturday Night Live tell-all book, Gasping for Airtime, he recounted his tumultuous 2 seasons on the show as an anxiety-ridden, self-medicating mess who struggled, mostly unsuccessfully, to get his sketches on the air. One of those sketches that did make it into the show, however, ultimately led to his downfall. As Mohr explained, he wrote a sketch about father and son innkeepers after watching a stand-up routine from comedian Rick Shapiro, and admittedly cribbed it word for word. After the episode aired, Mohr was called into a meeting with SNL executive producer Lorne Michaels and supervising producer Ken Imong, who asked if Mohr had ever heard of Shapiro. Mohr lied and said that he hadn't, at which point Imong played a recording of Shapiro's original bit. Mohr remained adamant that it was a coincidence. Shapiro ultimately sued, receiving an undisclosed settlement that included the sketch being scrubbed from all future broadcasts. Mohr wrote, "Undoubtedly, I should have been fired, but I wasn't." He was, however, let go at the end of the season in 1995. Mohr didn't disagree with the decision, continuing, "What I did was inexcusable, and no apology in the world could ever make up for it." Al Franken was part of the writing staff of Saturday Night Live's first season in 1975. He remained on the show as a writer-performer for decades, but he decided to leave after losing out on the Weekend Update anchor spot to Norm Macdonald in 1994. He had bigger ambitions in mind. Franken took his political satire outside of Rockefeller Plaza, publishing his bestseller, Rush Limbaugh is a Big Fat Idiot, and Other Observations, in 1996. In 2004, he began hosting his own political radio show. In that show's final episode in 2007, Franken made a big announcement. He was running for a Senate seat in his home state of Minnesota. In 2009, Franken was elected to the Senate, declaring victory after a recount in what was a very tight race. He was re-elected in 2014, but his political career came to an infamous end in 2017, when he announced he would be resigning after several allegations of sexual harassment were leveled against him. In his resignation speech, Franken said he remembered some of those accusations very differently, claiming, "Some of the allegations against me are simply not true. I know in my heart, nothing that I have done as a senator, nothing, has brought dishonor on this institution." Norm Macdonald joined Saturday Night Live for its 19th season in 1993, taking over Weekend Update anchor duties a year later. One of Macdonald's most frequent targets was former NFL great O.J. Simpson, who had the attention of the entire country during his murder trial. Long-standing rumors claim that Macdonald's jokes about Simpson were ultimately what led to his firing in 1998.
Thanks, I'm Norm Macdonald, and now the fake news. Well, it is finally official. Murder is legal in the state of California.
Macdonald's barbs often went for the jugular, which reportedly rankled powerful NBC executive and personal friend of O.J., Don Ohlmeyer. Interviewed for Live from New York, Macdonald recounted being told he would no longer be anchoring Weekend Update. The reason, he was informed, was because Ohlmeyer said so. Macdonald decided to call Ohlmeyer directly, who confirmed that Macdonald was done. No mention was made of Simpson, however. Ohlmeyer reportedly told Macdonald he was let go because his segment was, quote, just not as funny as it should be. In hindsight, Macdonald said that he was simply happy that he was able to be on SNL at all. He looked on the bright side, saying, "To me, just getting there was the thing." One of the most coveted gigs on Saturday Night Live is a position as an anchor on the news segment Weekend Update. It's a job that turned previous players like Chevy Chase, Tina Fey, and Seth Meyers into household names. But Colin Quinn found that his time behind the desk left a sour taste in his mouth. As he admitted on The Howard Stern Show, "I should have just left after a few shows. I should have said, I can't do this. Whatever the energy was that I was bringing, I couldn't enjoy it. I loved my first 2.5 years of Saturday Night Live, loved it more than anything. And doing the update thing was just ugly." Quinn's unhappiness had a lot to do with the circumstances surrounding how he landed that spot. His predecessor and best friend on SNL, Norm Macdonald, had been fired, and Quinn was quickly ushered in to take his place. TV pundits often rate Quinn among the segment's worst hosts, in sharp contrast to Macdonald, who is frequently rated among the best. Quinn happens to agree. He continued, "I feel like I even sabotaged it because I felt so guilty, even though I had nothing to do with Norm leaving. But it was still, wow, I'm taking Norm's thing after they fire him for this whole thing." Quinn left SNL in 2000 and has since found passion in converting his comedy into Broadway productions. In 1995, Cheri Oteri joined Saturday Night Live at a very opportune time in the show's history. In response to dwindling ratings the previous season, producer Lorne Michaels got rid of the bulk of the show's cast, replacing them with Oteri and other soon-to-be iconic players, including Will Ferrell and Daryl Hammond. Filling those voids meant that Oteri and company were entering a workplace far less toxic than previous seasons. Oteri recalled on the Fly on the Wall with Dana Carvey and David Spade podcast, "Everybody came in at the same time, and there was this appreciation and energy, and we just all hit the ground running. There wasn't anybody that was sitting around intimidating and wondering if you were going to take their spot or anything." Oteri thrived in that revitalized workplace, showcasing characters like the spunky cheerleader, Ariana, and the easily annoyed Nadine.
Simmer down now. Excuse me? Everybody want to return something, so just simmer down now.
5 years later, confident from being nominated for a Primetime Emmy in 2000 for her guest appearance on the sitcom Just Shoot Me and a role in Scary Movie, Oteri left SNL with hopes of becoming a major star. That prospect never truly materialized, as she settled for bombs like Dumb and Dumberer, When Harry Met Lloyd, and a handful of TV cameos. Nasim Pedrad joined Saturday Night Live at the start of the 2009 season and exited 5 years later. It didn't take her long to find work. Immediately after leaving the show in 2014, she was cast in Mulaney, a Fox sitcom starring and created by former SNL writer John Mulaney. During an appearance at the Television Critics Association summer press tour that year, Pedrad explained her decision to quit SNL, saying, "Obviously, there's nothing like that show, and I was lucky to be there for 5 years. At some point, you have to leave. And I can't think of a better reason to leave than for this particular show and this particular cast." Despite the talent involved, Mulaney was trashed by TV critics. One review from Slate read in part, "Mulaney is just like Seinfeld, except it's not funny." The show was canceled after a single season. Nevertheless, Pedrad remained a hot commodity on television, eventually creating and starring in the TBS sitcom Chad. Taran Killam was hired by SNL in 2010, and in 2016 his contract wasn't renewed. As the actor explained in an interview with Uproxx, he was surprised by his firing. As he put it, "You signed for 7 years, so I had 1 more year. I had sort of had it in my head I would make this upcoming year my last year, but then heard they weren't going to pick up my contract. I was never given a reason why, really."
Had a good run while it lasted, didn't we, Chief?
We sure did. We sure did.
Since then, it's not like Killam has been hard up for work. He appeared in several movies, including the 2017 big screen comedy Killing Gunther, which he also directed and wrote. Killam also starred in the ABC sitcom Single Parents, which ran from 2018 to 2020. In an interview with the I Was There Too podcast, Killam claimed that the show became less collaborative and more competitive after Seth Meyers left to host his own late-night show. Killam stated, "When Seth Meyers left the show, the dynamic changed quite a bit. He was the last person there who I witnessed really collaborate with Lorne, as opposed to just kind of do what Lorne says." The 2016 announcement of Taran Killam's firing from Saturday Night Live was accompanied by that of Jay Pharoah, who, like Killam, had been a cast member since 2010. A year after his firing, Pharoah spoke out about his exit from the show during a radio interview on Hot 97, musing, "You go where you're appreciated. If you have multiple people on the cast saying things like, 'You're so talented,' and 'you're able,' and they don't use you, it's unfair and it's making us feel bad because they don't use you and you're a talent." Pharoah followed up his SNL stint by starring in the Showtime comedy White Famous, which ran for a single season in 2017. He's had plenty of other gigs, but unfortunately his biggest headline since his departure had nothing to do with acting. In 2020, Pharoah was accosted by LAPD officers while out on a run. He was mistaken for a suspect and detained, as an officer handcuffed him and knelt on his neck. Pharoah questioned during an interview with Gayle King, "Why does it have to go to that extremity?" Luke Null's time on Saturday Night Live was so fleeting that most viewers probably don't even remember him. Null had joined the show at the start of the 2017 season, but was let go before the next one started. During his single season, Null did have a few standout moments, like when he portrayed a heavy metal fan who meets with a surgeon in hopes of getting his demon-style horns removed.
"You know how your dad and your brother won't speak to me?
Yeah?
I think it's because I'm a human man with horns."
Speaking with Vulture after his SNL exit, Null reflected on his brief tenure with the show, saying, "I was only ever there 1 year. I had 1 season, and you definitely have a lot of questions looking back. Did I do something wrong? Was I not writing good enough stuff? Honestly, looking back, knowing how the show works, the mechanisms and the politics and its energy, it's a very tense and stressful place. No one there is having fun," air quotes. While Null was quick to admit that it was tough to break out in a cast packed with insanely talented performers, he also wondered why he hadn't been given more of a chance, saying, so it was hard to leave and not think I didn't get much of an at-bat. Bobby Moynihan joined Saturday Night Live in 2008, quickly becoming a fan favorite thanks to his original characters like Drunk Uncle and impressions like Jersey Shore star Snooki. Moynihan left the show of his own accord in 2017 and immediately landed the lead role in a CBS sitcom, Me, Myself, and I. While promoting the show at the 2017 edition of the Television Critics Association Summer Press Tour, Moynihan opened up about his decision to leave SNL, saying, "The day you get SNL, you start worrying about your exit from SNL. That was always on my mind. I was an acting major in college. I would like to show people I can play a grown man instead of just dressing up like Rosie O'Donnell." Me, Myself, and I wasn't the hit Moynihan had hoped for, and it was yanked off the air after just 6 low-rated episodes. Moynihan still landed on his feet, though. In addition to numerous TV guest spots, Moynihan became a series regular on the Ted Danson-starring NBC sitcom Mr. Mayor, and has proven to be a prolific voice actor, with credits including DuckTales and Star Wars Resistance. There were clearly no hard feelings on either side about Moynihan's SNL departure. Moynihan returned in 2022 for a surprise appearance on that year's Halloween episode, reprising Drunk Uncle and other characters. Vanessa Bayer became a Saturday Night Live standout during her 7-season stint on the show, beginning in 2010 and concluding in 2017. Her decision to leave the show, Bayer told The Hollywood Reporter, came about from the realization that she'd simply been there long enough. In her words, "It felt like it was time for me. I had 7 seasons and just felt like it was time for someone else to do that job." The absolute favorite of all her characters, Bayer revealed, was Jacob the bar mitzvah boy. She explained, "He feels the closest to my personality. The shyness and awkwardness is at the core of me."
Moses spoke with God for 40 days. About the amount of time my mother spends on the phone with my Aunt Hillary.
Bayer's post-SNL roles have included multiple episode guest spots on Brooklyn Nine-Nine and NBC's Will and Grace revival. She also headlined her own Showtime comedy, I Love That For You, which was loosely based on her own experience as a survivor of childhood leukemia. As for how her fellow cast members responded to her exit, Bayer told HuffPost, "I feel like everyone was supportive and will miss you, but we understand. It's a very hectic schedule, so it's like, after 7 years, I want to take a nap." Most SNL players at least make it to airtime before they get fired, but that wasn't the case for Shane Gillis. In September 2019, a Saturday Night Live press release announced that he was one of 3 new hires, and almost immediately after the announcement, a clip of Gillis using racially insensitive terms for Asian Americans on a podcast began to circulate online. Backlash ensued, while more examples of Gillis using offensive language emerged. SNL executive producer Lorne Michaels acted quickly and decisively. Within days of Gillis's hiring announcement, Michaels revealed that he was unhired. A spokesperson for Michaels said in a statement to CNN, "We were not aware of his prior remarks that have surfaced over the past few days. The language he used is offensive, hurtful, and unacceptable. We are sorry that we did not see these clips earlier, and that our vetting process was not up to our standard." Gillis responded in a since-deleted tweet, writing in part, "I'm a comedian who pushes boundaries. I sometimes miss." Nevertheless, Gillis eventually did get to spend some time in Studio 8H when he hosted the show in 2024.
I probably shouldn't be up here, honestly. I should be home. I should be a high school football coach. That's what I should be.
Fans of Saturday Night Live were saddened to learn in the summer of 2019 that writer-turned-cast member Leslie Jones wouldn't be returning for the show's upcoming season. According to a Deadline report, the decision to leave was entirely her own. Jones then confirmed her exit on social media, expressing her hope that the fans she'd gained from SNL would support her future endeavors. The first of those projects was Leslie Jones' Time Machine, her debut Netflix stand-up comedy special, which dropped in January 2020. In addition, Jones was hired to host ABC's revival of the classic TV game show, Supermarket Sweep. Speaking with the New York Times, Jones explained why she decided to exit SNL when she did. Her reasoning was simple. As she put it, "I'm 52 and tired. SNL is a hard job. It's 100 hours a week. Also, it's an institution. I get bored, and I want to do different things." Beck Bennett was one of 6 actors hired for the cast of Saturday Night Live in 2013, and quickly established himself as the go-to guy for quirky impressions, satirizing everyone from Tom Brady to Vladimir Putin. But there was one character type he played more than any other.
No! You need me! Who's gonna play the dumb idiot?
When Bennett announced his departure on Instagram in 2021, he wrote, "Thank you for 8 years of remarkable people and incredible experiences that completely changed my life." Speaking with Time, Bennett recalled performing on stage, glimpsing his wife, Jessie Hodges, sitting in the front row while the series creator Lorne Michaels looked on smiling. As he put it, "It really felt like the universe was telling me, this is in fact time for you to leave. You're not going to do better than this." Another factor was that his wife lived in Los Angeles, while SNL is filmed in New York City. He continued, "It's been 8 years of basically long distance with my wife. And if we are going to start a family at any point, I think we have to start that at some point soon." In 2022, the couple finally welcomed their first child. In 2014, Pete Davidson was one of the youngest ever people to join the Saturday Night Live cast at just 20 years old. He quickly made a mark with his Weekend Update appearances as himself, but eventually became a tabloid staple thanks to his string of relationships with famous women, including Ariana Grande, Kate Beckinsale, and Kim Kardashian. Thanks to his breakout status on the show, Davidson hit the big screen with roles in The Suicide Squad and a star turn in The King of Staten Island, the 2020 Judd Apatow-directed feature loosely based on Davidson's real life. In May 2022, Davidson announced via Instagram that he was leaving the show. He wrote in part, "I owe Lorne Michaels and everyone at SNL my life." He also joked to Gold Derby, "It is my 7th year, and that's what the contract is usually for. I started there with acne and left with tattoos."
So are you officially leaving?
Yeah, man, Lorne accidentally gifted me a sock, so I'm free.
Despite heaping praises on Lorne Michaels and the show, Davidson also got candid about the harsh competition behind the scenes. As he said during an appearance on Live Your Truth, an honest conversation with Charlemagne the God, "As far as everyone else, it's a cutthroat show. Everyone's trying to get their on. Everyone wants to be the next thing." Kate McKinnon was a Saturday Night Live MVP during her 10-year run on the show, thanks to impressions of celebrities, ranging from Justin Bieber to Hillary Clinton. During her tenure, McKinnon had also established herself as a sought-after actor outside the show, in films like 2016's Ghostbusters and Office Christmas Party. She was Carol Baskin in the Tiger King-inspired TV series Joe vs. Carol, and voiced Miss Fiona Frizzle in Netflix's reboot of The Magic School Bus. McKinnon's decision to leave the show in 2022 didn't come lightly. She revealed during an appearance on Live with Kelly and Ryan, "I thought about it for a very long time, and it was very, very hard because all I ever wanted to do in my whole life was be on Saturday Night Live, and so I did. I loved it. I had the best decade, and then I was just like, my body was tired, and I felt like it was time." Asked what she planned to do with her Saturday nights, McKinnon admitted that it would probably be some time before she tuned in to watch any new episodes. She joked, "I think I'm just going to tape The Bachelorette and watch that instead." Joining Saturday Night Live in 2016, Melissa Villaseñor quickly became a standout for her eye-popping array of celebrity impressions. Over the course of 6 seasons on the show, she channeled everyone from Lady Gaga to Owen Wilson.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Villaseñor's decision to leave was spurred by anxiety attacks she'd been experiencing since becoming part of the SNL cast. During an interview with Daily Beast's The Last Laugh podcast, she said that she felt her exit was necessary to preserve her mental health. She admitted, "Last season, I had a couple of panic attacks. I think it was just, I was struggling. I always felt like I was on the edge of a cliff every week, and I was like, I don't want to be doing that to myself anymore. And it's not like the show was mean toward me or anyone. It was just how I handle things." After her SNL exit, Villaseñor branched out into new territory by releasing her first book, called Whoops, I'm Awesome. She told Entertainment Weekly, "I like telling people it's a book for an adult's inner child." Aidy Bryant's SNL journey began in 2012, and she made a name for herself playing a very specific type of character before she left the show a decade later.
I have played dozens of
teachers, principals, mothers, women named Diane, Susan, or Teacher.
Bryant's 2022 departure was actually later than it would have been if it wasn't for the pandemic, as she revealed to Variety. If it weren't for COVID, I probably would have left a few years earlier. When COVID hit, it was so jarring that we were all like, I'm definitely going to come back next year. However, Bryant's commitment to her Hulu series, Shrill, of which she was star and co-creator, forced her to miss several episodes that season. She continued, I kept trying to seek one last normal year. This year wasn't the normal year that I hoped for, but it was closer to that. It was like, okay, it's really time now, and 10 felt like a nice, solid round number. As for what lay ahead, Bryant explained that fans were more likely to see her create another original project than see her become an actor for hire. She told Variety, everything that has worked for me has been by writing it myself. When Cecily Strong appeared in her final episode of Saturday Night Live in December 2022, she'd been a cast member since 2012. Her send-off was celebrated on Weekend Update, where her recurring character Kathy Ann announced that she was finally being sent to jail for her many crimes.
I got to have so many of the best moments of my life in this place with these people that I love so much.
Strong shared a statement out of character in a subsequent Instagram post, reflecting on her decision to leave by writing, I am ready to go, but I'll always know home is here. I've had the time of my life working with the greatest people on earth. Strong also apologized for keeping the news under wraps until the last minute, but explained, I didn't want the extra pressure on something already so emotional for me. Thankfully, Strong's fans didn't go hungry for long, as she and comedian Keegan-Michael Key starred in the movie musical spoof series, Schmigadoon, for Apple TV+. Aristotle Athari may have lasted only one season on Saturday Night Live, but the show's first male Middle Eastern player still managed to make his mark, with characters like the artsy improv crooner Angelo and the android stand-up Laughingtosh 3000.
It's very hard to date as a robot. My last girlfriend was a GPS.
Unfortunately, the Texas native found it difficult to gain his footing when he joined in 2021 for season 47, especially due to pandemic precautions and the sheer size of the cast. He explained on the Saturday Night Network podcast, it was a very large cast. It was like 21 people in the cast. There's a finite number of spots that you can get for dress rehearsal. And the table reads, I think at the time, they were difficult in a lot of ways because we were still masked and separated, and there were growing pains in that regard. Athari believes he might have stayed if he were as connected as players like James Austin Johnson and Sarah Sherman, who also made the cast that year. He added, I just didn't know anybody. I think that would have also helped a lot if I was familiar with some of those people. Athari wasn't out of work long after leaving in 2022, having snagged a role in the sci-fi rom-com Molly and Max in the Future.